Hello! Welcome to Storytime with Miss Linda. I have a book for you today, The Tale of Benjamin Bunny by Beatrix Potter. Now, she's a lady that lived a long time ago in England. She's the author, which means she wrote the words, and she's the illustrator, which means she made the pictures. And she made these cute pictures of little animals. There's Benjamin Bunny. And you can see him. He's got a little coat on and little shoes. He's got a red pocket handkerchief. And he's got this big floppy hat. So let's see what happens with him. And there's the front, inside the front there. And you see this is actually his dad, old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. And there's a mama bunny and little baby bunnies in their little rabbit warren or home. And this says this is for the children of Sorry. That's a little village that Miss Potter lived in from old Mr. Bunny. So she's saying that old Mr. Bunny is the one that dedicated this book to them. Okay, so one morning, a little rabbit sat on a bank, not the kind of bank you put money in, a bank like beside the river where the hill raises up real quick. He pricked his ears and listened to the trick-trot of a pony. A gig was coming along the road. That is a small horse-drawn cart. It was driven by Mr. McGregor, and beside him sat Mrs. McGregor in her best bonnet. If you see the picture there, up in the corner, this is the little gig going away down the road. All right. As soon as they had passed, little Benjamin Bunny slid down into the road and set off, with a hop, skip, and a jump, to call upon his relations, who lived in the wood at the back of Mr. McGregor's garden. That wood was full of rabbit holes, and in the neatest, sandiest hole of all lived Benjamin's aunt and his cousins, Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. Old Mrs. Rabbit was a widow. She earned her living by knitting rabbit wool mittens and muffatees. I once bought a pair at a bazaar. She also sold herbs and rosemary tea and rabbit tobacco, which is what we call lavender. I do not know what a muffatee is. So I don't know everything either. But did you see her in her little home and her little shop, and she's packaging up things for some other little rabbits, I guess? Little Benjamin did not much want to see his aunt. He came round the back of the fir tree and nearly tumbled upon the top of his cousin Peter. And there you see Peter's ears. That's all you can see of him. Peter was sitting by himself. He looked poorly and was dressed in a red cotton pocket handkerchief. "Peter," said little Benjamin in a whisper, "who has got your clothes?" Now this time we see Peter, but all we see of Benjamin Bunny is his little shoes. Peter replied, remember he was asked, "Who has got your clothes?" Peter replied, "The scarecrow in Mr. McGregor's garden," and described how he had been chased about the garden and had dropped his shoes and coat. Little Benjamin sat down beside his cousin and assured him that Mr. McGregor had gone out in a gig, and Mrs. McGregor also, and certainly for the day, because she was wearing her best bonnet. Peter said he hoped that it would rain. At this point, old Mrs. Rabbit's voice was heard inside the rabbit hole, calling, "Cottontail, Cottontail, fetch some more chamomile." Peter said he thought he might feel better if he went for a walk. Do you think maybe he didn't want his mom to ask him to do some work? Maybe. They went away hand in hand and put and got upon the flat top of the wall at the bottom of the wood. From here, they looked down into Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter's coat and shoes were plainly to be seen upon the scarecrow, topped with an old tam-o'-shanter of Mr. McGregor's. So there you see the scarecrow's got his coat and shoes, and that tam-o'-shanter, if I can get that in focus for you, is a big old floppy hat. I think that's the floppy hat that we saw on the cover. Little Benjamin said, "It spoils people's clothes to squeeze under a gate. The proper way to get in is to climb down a pear tree." Peter fell down head first, but it was of no consequence, as the bed below was newly raked and quite soft. Oh, there he is, tumbling out of that tree. But he'll be fine. It had been sown with lettuces. They left a great many odd little footmarks all over the bed, especially little Benjamin, who was wearing clogs. See all their little footprints? Little Benjamin said the first thing to be done was to get back Peter's clothes in order that they might be able to use the pocket handkerchief. They took them off the scarecrow. There had been rain during the night. There was water in the shoes, and the coat was somewhat shrunk. Benjamin tried on the tam-o'-shanter, but it was too big for him. Okay, so you see there's Peter putting on that coat, and it's a little bit too small. And here's Benjamin is pouring the rain out of the shoes, and he's got that big floppy hat on. So now they're going to be able to use the pocket handkerchief. Then he suggested they should fill the pocket handkerchief with onions as a little present for his aunt. Peter did not seem to be enjoying himself. He kept hearing noises. I think Peter's pretty worried because last time he was in that garden, he got all chased around and was lucky to get out of it. Benjamin, on the contrary, was perfectly at home and ate a lettuce leaf. He said that he was in the habit of coming to the garden with his father to get lettuces for their Sunday dinner. The name of little Benjamin's papa was Old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. The lettuces certainly were very fine. Oh, and it looks like, besides eating a lettuce, he's got a little bit of flour he's got in his coat. Oh, he looks very handsome. Peter did not eat anything. He said he should like to go home. Presently, he dropped half the onions. Oh, dear. Little Benjamin said that it was not possible to get back up the pear tree with a load of vegetables. He led the way boldly towards the other end of the garden. They went along a little walk on planks under a sunny red brick wall. The mice sat on their doorsteps, cracking cherry stones. They winked at Peter Rabbit and little Benjamin Bunny. You see little mice watching them? Yeah. Presently, Peter let the pocket handkerchief go again. Oh dear, there go more of those onions. They got amongst flower pots and frames and tubs. Peter heard noises worse than ever. His eyes were as big as lollipops. He was a step or two in front of his cousin when he suddenly stopped. What did he see? This is what those little rabbits saw around that corner. A kitty cat. Little Benjamin took one look, and then, in half a minute less than no time, he hid himself and Peter and the onions underneath a large basket. That kitty cat would certainly chase them if it saw them. The cat got up and stretched herself and came and sniffed at the basket. Perhaps she liked the smell of onions. Anyway, she sat down upon the top of the basket. Now what are they going to do? There she is, sitting on the basket. She sat there for 5 hours. I cannot draw you a picture of Peter and Benjamin underneath the basket because it was quite dark, and because the smell of onions was fearful. It made Peter Rabbit and little Benjamin cry. The sun got round behind the wood, and it was quite late in the afternoon, but still the cat sat upon the basket. Oh, dear. Is she never going to leave? At length there was a pitter-patter, and some bits of mortar fell from the wall above. The cat looked up and saw old Mr. Benjamin Bunny prancing along the top of the wall of the upper terrace. He was smoking a pipe of rabbit tobacco and had a little switch in his hand. He was looking for his son. All right, so you see the little switch that he has there? That's a stick. When I was a kid, if we were naughty, we would sometimes get spanked with a stick or a switch. That's what they did back then. Well, old Mr. Bunny had no opinion whatever of cats. He took a tremendous jump off the top of the wall onto the top of the cat and cuffed it off the basket and kicked it into the greenhouse, scratching off a handful of fur. The cat was too much surprised to scratch back. Whoa, the avenging Mr. Old Benjamin Bunny. When old Mr. Bunny had driven the cat into the greenhouse, he locked the door. Then he came back to the basket and took out his son Benjamin by the ears and whipped him with the little switch. Then he took out his nephew Peter. There you go. You see Benjamin is rubbing his poor sore bum. And there's old Mr. Benjamin Bunny giving Peter a spanking with that switch. Ouch. Then he took out the handkerchief of onions and marched out of the garden. Oh, you see the bunnies, and they're rubbing their poor sore bums. And there's a kitty cat watching them from the window. Oh, he's got some lettuce as well as those onions, doesn't he? Oh. When Mr. McGregor returned about half an hour later, he observed several things which perplexed him. It looked as though some person had been walking all over the garden in a pair of clogs, only the footmarks were too ridiculously little. Also, he could not understand how the cat could have managed to shut herself up inside the greenhouse, locking the door upon the outside. We know how the cat got in there, don't we? That was old Mr. Benjamin Bunny. When Peter got home, his mother forgave him because she was so glad to see he had found his shoes and coat. Cottontail and Peter folded up the pocket handkerchief, and old Mrs. Rabbit strung up the onions and hung them from the kitchen ceiling with the bunches of herbs and the rabbit tobacco. The end. There, he's safe at home, and they're folding up the pocket handkerchief, and there's Mama Bunny, and she's got her two littlest bunnies sitting on her lap. And that is the tale of Benjamin Bunny. Thanks.